Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Got the stream up and running. Got some new lighting, some new ambiance for everybody. Let me know if it's doing okay. Let me know if it's doing okay. I got the chat up and running. Absolutely. This is looking great. So if you are just tuning in, this is your first time, welcome. This is Conducting Perspectives. I'm Michael Flynn. I'm a second lieutenant with the United States Air Force Band of the West. And we are out here today talking about Cajun folk songs. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for checking in. Josh, thank you for liking my video. All your percussion stuff has been great. So if you're interested in checking out the musical offerings we have at the Band of the West, go ahead and check out the Facebook page. You can find it down in the description of this video. And again, I am Lieutenant Michael Flynn. I am the flight commander of the United States Air Force Band of the West. Thank you for joining us. We've got Cajun folk songs today. We've got a couple of different links in the description for you. We've got one from Manhasset Music. It is going to be the link to the perusal score for Cajun folk songs. So if you wanted to check this one out and follow along with what we're talking about, you can check that out in the link. Also, there's going to be some YouTube links down in there with the description of what they are that we're going to be talking about today as well, which will be helpful for this particular score. Also, because of the overwhelming response to this particular video series, we're going to be doing a second video this week on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central. We're going to be talking all about score study and score study techniques, and that's going to be based on Steve Daniel's Magnolia Star. And we've actually gotten permission from the composer to use this work and make sure that you have access to it. So access to that score is in a link also provided in the description of the video. Lots of information in there, and let me know if this is coming across okay. Thanks a lot for checking it out. I'm also using a external microphone. Let me know how the sound is. Last time it worked out great. So again, this is Lieutenant Michael Flynn. I'm flight commander with the United States Air Force Band of the West. We're talking about Cajun folk songs today by Frank Ticheli. So a couple of things. First, I'd like to thank a few people for checking this out. And a couple of people, we've had great responses from Raphael, Jeff, Mark, and Chad. Thanks again for reaching out for the messages for me, and hopefully we can answer some of your questions and also approach some of the topics that you'd like to have me discuss as well. So thank you so much for joining. The plan for today is to talk about, again, Cajun folk songs. Material we're going to be talking about is the story and story creation, the inner line, time in terms of slow or fast, and how we manipulate that with the conducting, and also conducting pattern decisions. And at the very end, if we have some time, we'll talk about some videos. So thanks again for checking this out. Lieutenant Michael Flynn with the United States Air Force Band of the West. Adam Brooks, thanks for liking this video and sending this along. Hope you're enjoying. Now, if you're watching this and you are watching from any place that's not in my house, go ahead and put in the comments in the video and say where you're from and what you're doing and where you're watching from and how you're enjoying it. So if you have questions along the way, go ahead and put it up in the comments section as well. And just say hello and let me know that you're here and that it's working. So Cajun folk songs. Frank Ticheli. So for me, all music tells some type of a story. Sometimes we know what it is because the composer tells us, or sometimes we know what it is because of research that we've done. And Adam Brooks, can't watch right now, but looking forward to it later. Fantastic. Thanks for joining. I really appreciate you checking it out. How does the story help? How does talking about the story or understanding the story help us in our either conducting or the performance of it? So where can you find the clues for it? So in this particular one, Cajun folk songs, you might want to find out what Cajun means or where that's from. Folk songs, what kind of folk songs? Who else does transcriptions of folk songs? Who else is going to be recording folk songs? Perhaps in a gigantic sound recorder that I carried around in their back and things like that. Who else might be doing this? That's the type of information that when you get a piece like this, you can look into. So in this particular one, the composer gives us a little bit of a story on the composer's notes, which is really handy to have because he talks about what the story is. Now, fortunately for us, there is more information about this that you can find on the internet, which is really great. Now, in terms of the players, is it important to talk about the story with your musicians? Is it important to talk about the story with the people who are going to be playing this music? So a lot of times there's a disconnect between what's written on the page and any type of emotion or character that we're trying to portray through the music. And so a story, either the one that this piece is based on or one that you make up in your mind, kind of humanizes these notes on the page and lets us experience it on a level that we can relate to. So this particular one is, this piece is in 2 movements. This is in 2 movements, and we're going to go movement by movement and talk through a couple of different elements. So how do you humanize this first movement? Well, luckily for us, again, in the composer's notes, we do have a little bit of this story. And in the story, it talks about this first piece. It's about a woman and a captain who comes into the town. And the short story is that the captain comes, he says, you're going to be my wife. And she says, no, I'm not feeling so good. In fact, I'm dying. And she fakes her own death in order to escape. And she makes her escape, which is kind of a triumphant element in the first movement. So this story is something that kind of develops between the different voices, and how we conduct it can change depending on our understanding of the story. Now, if you didn't know about this story, you can actually write your own text to it. You write your own lyrics and write your own elements, this storyline that you're wanting to portray, which is something I really strongly encourage, especially with music that already has a story. Perhaps you can write a secondary story. And what that does is help you connect with people in a different way. So perhaps not everybody in your ensemble really believes that someone would fake their own death in order to escape this captain. Well, no problem, because there's a different storyline that can happen along the way. So for this particular piece at the beginning, it's important to listen to other versions of this work. So on YouTube, there's actually a couple of links in the description of the video where you can actually listen to original recordings of these works. And they're really, really interesting. And they give a kind of a different texture and perspective to what's happening. Actually, we were listening to this, and my wife and I were talking about it, and she said, this piece is kind of spooky sounding. It's just kind of dismal sounding. It's dreary and kind of and I agree. It's got this kind of drone underneath, and then it's got this kind of floating melody, which kind of just depicts some uncertainty to it. And she was right. So within this music, you can kind of help depict that. So looking at the score. All right. Aaron Flynn, thanks for checking out this video. If you're watching, go ahead and put a comment in there. If you're enjoying this, let me know what you think, and make sure that you let me know that it's actually working. So make sure that we can make any adjustments we have to. So the beginning of this, if you look at the beginning of the score, which you can access on the links in the description, there's not a whole lot going on in this first page. In fact, if you scroll all the way down this page, there's only one thing happening on this page, and it's going to be the alto saxophone solo. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what you think you'd be conducting in this first 6 bars. First 6 bars, only alto saxophone. So the question is, what do you need to conduct? Now think about that just for a second. If you have one player, what are you actually needing to conduct? For this particular piece, whenever I do it, I've done it a number of times with honor bands, and actually at university level as well. Whenever I go through the first read of this, I always talk to the individual who's going to be playing this saxophone solo first. Because a lot of the elements of shaping and line and time can be dealt with by having the saxophone player play it first, which they conveniently do at the beginning of the piece. So you can actually speak to them and say, hey, let's hear you play it. What about shaping it like this? What about shaping it like this? How to try these different elements. And that way, the other individuals who are listening to the solo can say, oh, yeah, now I understand how to play my line a little bit later. So highly recommended is to talk to the individual playing it ahead of time. At the opening of this piece, I did this with an honor band a number of years ago. And I spoke to the player and I said, now listen, I'm going to kind of let you go and let you perform this how you'd like. Let's hear it. And so they got together with me kind of on the side. We heard it a couple times, and we made a couple of adjustments. And I said, I don't want to freak you out, but I'm actually not going to conduct time through all this. And the young woman was panic, flashing in front of her eyes. But how do I keep my time? Well, it's the introduction to a folk song. It's time is completely relative. So at the opening of this, the only thing that I want to do is help shape the musical line in the first 6 bars. So the first 6 bars, there's a couple of things that I look at in terms of this. And you can kind of see the markings here that I have. And I'll center that right there. So what I have are overall phrase markings, miniature phrase markings, and length on the top of the first 16th. So if I want to talk about anything, I want to talk about the length on that top of the 16th phrase. So you get the beginning, it's da 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 dee da mi da da bi ba ba da dee, and lingering on that first 16th note. Another thing I talked to the soloist about is making the phrases as long as possible. In fact, trying to make it all the way to the end of measure 6 in one breath. So when I'm doing actually the conducting, I kind of take an idea about something that I've watched Leonard Bernstein do in his conducting of the Rite of Spring, which video is also in the description, is looking at what you have to do at the opening of something when there's only one person playing. And so he kind of starts up here and he opens his hands and brings the ensemble in and looks at the soloist. Go. And so that's how I prefer to start this piece. So you end up with the soloist starting from silence at their own pace. So there you go. I encourage them to flow through. So at the end of bar 6, I frequently find that the soloist wants to rust through the breath in order to come in correctly on the downbeat of 7 in time. Encourage your soloist to take time to breathe comfortably, because the phrase actually breathes there as well. And luckily for us, only one clarinet player comes in on the downbeat of bar 7. So you can actually guide them in similarly, is that they'll wait. They'll wait for your downbeat and have the sound come together. So overarching idea of what we're going to be conducting is not necessarily da 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 dee da dee dee. I mean, you could do it that way, but certainly this is the way that I would prefer to do it. Is you bring the ensemble in, soloist. Oh, da da dee dum dee da dee 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 da da dee dee da da, and then give them time to release and have the note finish. So that's how I enjoy guiding the soloist through this, which leads us to our first point of the discussion is, what do you need to conduct? Starting at measure 7, you have the beginning of Ticheli's marvelous counterlines that go along with the melody. The counterlines are not always done in giant segments. So if you are a flute player, you might only see a portion of the counterline. So you may need a little bit more guidance than the lines that are inherently musical. What we want to do as musicians, as conductors and musicians, is help the individuals who are just holding on to a single note, or they have rest and then they have to come in and join the phrase as much as possible. The lines that are not inherently melodic. So the line that the saxophonist plays, she or he has set it up for the whole rest of this movement. So you can guide them and you can make sure that they take time, but you don't need to control it. You can focus your attention more on the players who need all of your help. So we're going to talk about that here starting in measure 7. So as soon as the clarinet comes in, I'm almost completely ignoring the saxophone, making sure that they have a little bit of pulse so that the two players can align together. So you have 2 before 7, you have ba dee dee da dum, then over to the clarinet. Dee da dee da dee dee dum dee. And then 11. At 11, you've got the clarinet moving all of the interesting notes. All of those accidentals are the ones that you want to bring out. So at 11, you have here, and then the ensemble comes in. couple of markings that I like to make a couple adjustments to in order to bring forth those inner lines is at measure 12. I actually make the decrescendo happen right as soon as the clarinet gets to their E, and then crescendoing into the downbeat of the next measure, resolving downwards in the chromatic line going in 12, 13, 14, 15, taking time on the last beat of 15 and going into 16. So again, if you're enjoying this stream, go ahead and type in the comments section. Let me know that you're here. I'm not seeing a whole lot of comments coming through. Adam wrote to me. I just want to make sure it's working. And if not, if this live stream isn't going exactly as planned, it'll be posted up on my Facebook page. Feel free to contact me through the messenger in order to kind of check this out and check out some of these things that we're talking about. So when you go into measure 11, you've got clarinet, clarinet, more clarinet, clarinet, and then once you get to the downbeat of 15, you can turn your attention to a little bit of the subdivision of the eighth notes. Release. So you may be thinking, this is all great, but how do I do anything? You're not looking at pattern. I'm looking and watching you, and there's no pattern. I don't understand. It's just 1 and 2. How are my musicians going to know when to come in? A couple ways you can handle this. One of which is you let everybody know, say, hey, listen, everyone comes in at 17. I will make it abundantly clear when it's your time to come in. Or you can trust that they will be able to count quarter notes. Say, now I'm going to be conducting a lot of the shape of the phrase. Actually, for this whole piece, it is your responsibility to count your rests. I won't leave you hanging, though, because when we get to 17, everyone's going to be coming in all together. So be aware that they can have some of that responsibility. And if you've never done this before and you've only ever gone 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, try this out. You'd be surprised at how well it works when you say, count quarter notes until we get to 17, and I'll help you all come in there. And trust me, it'll work. When you get to 17, there's a whole bunch of inner lines that you need to help. So once you get to 17, there's a lots of stuff. The first thing is in the trombone. You pressing into the first note in the tubas. The trombones leading through their quarter notes into the eighth notes. Trumpet 2, alto saxophone 2, clarinet 3. All of these inner voices are the ones that need your help more than anything else. Ticheli has a really great way of utilizing inner parts for really important counterlines and sometimes major melodic lines. I can remember playing His Amazing Grace and playing, I think it's trumpet 3. And I was like, oh, trumpet 3. But there's a section in the middle that's only trumpet 3. It's fantastic. So individuals who might be waiting on the people next to them, they need some encouragement. And this is where you can do it. Now, the line in itself is in the trumpet 1. You've got some stuff in the alto saxophone and the clarinet. Those players will inherently play this musical line, very well. It's the parts in between that need help. So especially like if you look at the clarinet part, clarinet 2, you've got a half note tied to a quarter note, boring. Quarter note, quarter and a half note, really boring, right? If you're playing clarinet, you're thinking, oh, well, this song is terrible. I don't understand what my role is. So you can help them. So 17, you get and then clarinets da dee dum be dee dee ba dee dee da dee 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 dee. Now my singing isn't great and it's not on pitch, and if you're have perfect pitch and you're just, well, those notes aren't correct, I'm not worried about having my singing be correct. I'm worried about my singing being interesting. So if my singing is interesting, has some melodic shape, I can help to translate that into the players as much as possible. So a lot with this piece is also taking time on the eighth notes and making the students but encouraging them to not rush through all of the eighth notes. It really help the way that this kind of music flows. So any other questions that you might have, go ahead and put them on the comments section. Again, this is Lieutenant Michael Flynn. I am with the United States Air Force Band of the West, which are links to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram can be found in the description of the video. Go ahead and check out the great video productions that we're going on. We're going crazy on right now. There's going to be something every day coming up on the Facebook. So going back to talking about what you're going to be how you're going to be controlling some of the time. When you get to measure 29, in the third bar of 29, you have eighth notes in clarinet 3, and you've got eighth notes in trumpet 3 that kind of control the time into 32. So you have at 29, you've got quarter note, quarter note, quarter note. So every time you're moving in these eighth notes, encouraging those players to play with the time and make sure that it's not so metronomical will help smooth out the transitions that are written within all of these inner parts. I encourage you to have all of the lead parts sit out and listen to the inner parts and encourage them to play within the time that they have and elongate the notes as long as possible, as long as possible. So questions so far? If you have any, go ahead and put them in the comment section. Margaret Flynn watching from Cape Cod. Wonderful that it's doing so well. I know that my sister is watching from Colorado Springs and it is snowing there. So enjoying this time inside in quarantine, you can do some music making on your own here with this piece of music. And it's a wonderful piece of music. Encourage your players in the inner lines to make those lines move as smoothly as possible from note to note and take their time moving from each note. Now, this may be something completely new for your players, and this is a perfect movement to kind of work with them to stretch their comfort level, because the notes themselves aren't that technically difficult. There's not a whole bunch of 5-lit runs, and there's not a whole bunch of like 6/3 patterns, and this is not right a spring rhythmic complexity, but it is musically complex, and how you move those notes one to the next is really important. So you can see on my score here, I have lots of bracketing, and that bracketing has to do with how the notes are moved from one to the next. Now, if you've never done that, or if that's something that you're not comfortable with, there's a lot of resources for that. I've been doing that since I was in college with Professor Michael Galloway at Mansfield University in Pennsylvania, when he talked to me about bracketing notes going upbeats into downbeats, and that's where I started. Fortunately for us, there's actually a book about that, and it's called Note Grouping. And this is a fantastic resource if you're looking to be able to translate what you do inherently well musically as a teacher, as a player, but you're trying to talk to somebody who doesn't have that same innate musical ability. Check this book out. It's really good in terms of being a pedagogical tool for an instructor to say, hey, if you're not feeling this inherently, here's a way to start thinking about it so that you can play musically and start thinking musically about your lines. So this is by James Morgan Thurman. It's really excellent. It's an excellent resource. I strongly recommend it. So if you're just checking in, go ahead and put a comment in the videos and say hello and where you're watching from, and let me know if you're enjoying it. I'm trying some new setup here with a little bit higher here with the computer, and so you can see the conducting a little bit better. So if you were looking at the second movement of this piece, I remember distinctly being at a honor band festival, and I was a clinician. So the band would go and play, and some of the judges would give scores, and then I would go clinic the band in terms of what they were playing. And if you're checking out this piece, it actually says that it's going to be in 5. And the conductor does talk about how you can kind of change that in your conducting pattern. The composer does in the composer's notes. But one way that you can do this piece is conduct in 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you'd like. And that is certainly the prerogative of the conductor. And this portion is talking about, do you need to conduct everything exactly as it shows up in your score? So think about that question just for a second. And I think a lot of this in terms of folk music, you think about Lincolnshire Posy, and you think about how this piece works. It's metered in 5 only because the folk song in transcription into modern manuscript looks like it should be in 5. So at the very beginning, the rhythm is da 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 da. da, which is certainly how it's metered in here. And the composer actually talks about how you can do it in a couple of different ways. The way that I prefer to do it is to do it in 4, actually. And because if you look at the sandblock part there, the kabasa part, when you have the accent on the 4th, 8th note, it moves the beat from za da 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 za da 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 to za da 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 za da 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 za da da da. And if you actually listen to that original recording that is on YouTube, so it'll be in the link in the description, the tune itself has a lilt to it, a folk song lilt to it, a kind of nonchalant lilt to it, as if you're whistling. This is you're walking down the street and you're singing this folk song. You notice that there's no rigidity to any of the motions that I'm doing with this. It reminds me of that hand that you stick out the window and to make it with the wind go over your hand. It's got this kind of a, oh yeah, this is like flying. And that's kind of the feel that it should go for. A technical note, I do prefer the kabasa actually here, especially with honor bands, because the sandblocks simply don't have enough projection in order to get past the front of the ensemble. The ensemble might hear it, but it's hard to get the sandblocks to speak really, really far out. So the kabasa is a really nice option. So I kind of build this from the front and I say, all right, well, let's listen to the percussionists. And then if you can get them to go, zak, da, da da zak da 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 zak da da da. They've actually had the whole ensemble kind of sing that along. Zak da 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 zak da 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 zak da da. That helps tremendously, tremendously. Mark LeChance, absolutely. Note grouping is fantastic book. I can't recommend it highly enough, especially if you can take the ideas that are in our brains as musicians and you're talking to, like, you know, somebody who's just starting out with music, who's thinking, oh, what buttons do I press down? This will help actually teach them how to group these together. Thanks for checking it out, Mark. Chase Romans, hello from Hattiesburg. Hope you're doing well, Chase, and enjoy Hattiesburg. Enjoy Hattiesburg right now. Hope you're safe, especially as the tornadoes kind of went through Texas and down towards Hattiesburg. Hope you guys are doing okay. So, speaking of Chase, who plays the saxophone, you're going to be looking at the alto saxophone and the oboe coming into this performance, starting in measure 3. Now, I almost wish that they had made the alto saxophone part and the oboe part look exactly like the woodblock part. Excuse me, the kabasa part, where it goes zakadu ga do do zakadu da do do. But the alto saxophone part and the oboe part look like this. So you just kind of have to get everybody singing it together. Frequently when I'm doing this piece, I'll have the entire ensemble kind of scat sing that rhythm along with the kabasa, and have the people who have to play because not everybody in the ensemble comes in and until much, much later. I'm looking at, you know, measure 17, measure 22. People can go zakatuda bugada zakatuda bugada forever. Also, be aware that once that motor starts going, it is hard for them to stop. So it begs the question, do you conduct every beat of this all the time? You might at the beginning. I usually give 3/4 at the beginning to subdivide the quarter notes for the kabasa player, so you get alto saxophone, and then the trumpets come in the melody. And at that point, I usually step back from the conducting because the motor's already going. You can go in and navigate and say, no, it's supposed to be here. And they start having a little plan of their own, deviating, and then they get back to it. Using a 4-part pattern also allows you to control kind of the direction of what you're doing in terms of having melodic line. So once the trumpet comes in, it's so everything you want to do has this kind of a lilt to it. It's almost in one. So the trumpet comes in, So you get that kind of a feel to it, where the lines have this overwhelming lilt to them, absolutely. So when you get into this, you've got a whole bunch of entrances and a lot of instruments where they're waiting to play, and you have to kind of, oh, where's the clarinet, where's the trombone, how do these people come in? And it's a lot of manipulating this space right in front of you to get in front of the people who are going to come in next. So you've got kibasa, tenor sax, clarinet, bassoon. So before this movement starts, I'd be going tenor sax, bassoon, kibasa. Oboe and alto saxophone. Trumpet. So you say, well, trumpet comes in there, but the trombones and the clarinets and the bassoons also have to come in there. Well, you've got 2 bars previous to connect with those individuals. So just kind of a step by step, and I know I'm stopping along the way and talking out which instrument comes in next, but you get an idea about where the focus is turning before these entrances to try and help them along. Yes, you are supposed to come in here. Yes, that's right. So at the beginning, you get bassoon, clarinet, tenor saxophone, and kibasa. During that last measure, I'm connecting with oboe and alto saxophone. And I'm thinking to the next entrance. And that point, I've already connected visually with trombone and clarinet 2. And my vision goes to trombone, clarinet 2, trumpet. So I connect with those individuals the bar before, and then moving over to trumpet to help that entrance. So it will look something like this. At the very beginning, you get bassoon, clarinet, alto saxophone, and kibasa. Next one. I'm connecting, and and now trumpet 2 comes in all by themselves, and you've got 2 bars to figure out how to connect to them. Trumpet 2, we're gonna get you. And bum, bum, 3, and bam, and then they go. You can help them come in as you go. So when you're looking at this piece of music and you look at all this space and you think, whoa, there's not a lot going on there. What am I going to do? You're going to connect with the players who don't have the main melodic line so that they know it's their turn as well. If you just start at the beginning and you do kibasa, alto saxophone, trumpet, you're missing a whole lot of people, especially when you have the luxury of 2 bars to say, okay, oboe and alto saxophone are coming in bar 3. Then I'll have 2 bars to look for bassoon 2, clarinet 2, trombone, and end with trumpet. So you get bassoon, clarinet, trombone, and trumpet. Bum, 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 bum. That will help you navigate your way through all of these lines and help the individuals feel comfortable coming in. Would this piece be for high school or junior high school? That's an excellent question. Thanks for asking that question. So this piece is listed as grade 3. So for me, I've played it at junior high school, and college level. And it depends on what your purpose is for doing this piece. So if you want to expose students to some folk tunes, and you say, oh, well, I'll have everybody play the solos. And, well, maybe we don't have an oboe player. No problem. We'll have a flute player do it. It's very easily transferable from one part to the next. I'd put this squarely in the category of high school competition piece. A lot of this is on a competition list. So if you're doing festivals, this would be a really good one. This is a really great university piece. This is a great university band piece. You need a great concert band piece, a great wind ensemble piece. It has some unique elements in terms of feel that the students can work with. A very beautiful first movement that you can work with, kind of moving the line and thinking in terms of longer phrases and phrasing for music that is not incredibly technically difficult. So great question. Thanks for asking that as well. So a couple of things we're going to talk about here in this second movement as well. The time. So at the very beginning, the conductor's note says that, oh, quarter note equals 168 instead of 160. It's a very unique thing that we have a living composer who's talking about his music. And we'll talk about that on Wednesday as well when we look at Steve Daniel's Magnolia Star. But being able to speak to them. If you're doing a piece by a living composer, most recently it's been canceled since, but I was doing a piece by Brian Balmages in Hawaii as a performance piece in a concert band out there. And so I reached out to the composer, said, "Hey, I'm doing your piece of music. Do you have any program notes that you'd like to include? Do all of the tempos have any of them changed? What do you feel about this?" I had a list of questions about the piece, and the composer, he's really famous, and he said, "Well, I'd love to talk to you about this," and gave me a ton of information. So feel free to reach out to these living composers while you can and say, "What do you think about this music? Has anything changed? I'm thinking about doing this. I have questions to do this." And most of the composers, actually all of the composers I've ever talked to, are just thrilled that their music is being played and that you're interested enough to reach out to them and ask them these questions. So I strongly encourage you to check that out. And if you're looking at this piece and you say, "Oh, it says 160 on the metronome marking on the second movement," it's actually changed by the composer and how it feels. There's a really famous interview that Mahler did about his music, and they were talking about, "Oh, well, how fast should this movement of the adagietto go?" And he said, "Well, for this piece, for this orchestra, it was this fast. And for this orchestra, it was this fast." And the question was, well, why isn't it just the same? It's because music is fluid and it changes all the time. So these are really good guidelines. Very, very very specific guidelines are unique in that they will say, must be exactly at this time if you're doing it with, for example, music with electronics or something like that. But other than that, there is a little bit of wiggle room one way or another depending on your group that you're doing. Okay, so a couple other things in this particular piece. If you have 100, starting looking at measure 30 and 31, looking in through 35, so 31 is still in 5/4, conducted in 4. And you've got 4 bars of that, and then you've got a bar of 3, and then you've got a bar of 2, and then a bar of 3, and that goes on for 4, 5, 6 bars, 7 bars, and then a bar of 2, and then a bar of 3. And there's lots of entrances, and the people there's notes all over the place, and they're playing everywhere, and there's all kinds of entrances. And what am I going to do? We've been all loose with the conducting, and everything's been like this, and this, and this, and then it gets hard. So I take my inspiration for music like this from that same Bernstein Rite of Spring video that I've linked in the description. So he's doing it, and he's a fantastic orchestra, and he's very, very free with what he gives the ensemble and the freedom that they give the ensemble to perform this piece. However, there are a number of points within this performance where he gets rid of all of the fluidity of what he's doing and then makes everything as clean as possible. As clean as possible here so that there's no discrepancy of where the beat is. And then as soon as that's over, then he moves back and transitions out of that. And that's an important skill to have, is that you don't have to, the whole time doesn't have to be but you can go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and that is okay. The ensemble members, as a player, and I know that many of you have played in these ensembles, if you're checking this out and you're saying like, well, when I get to this hard part and I'm playing my trumpet, no longer am I thinking like, oh, I'm going to stare at the conductor while they're playing. Like, no, I'm going to play all these really hard notes. And what they need to see over the stand or to the side of the stand, however, is the clarity of what you're doing. So I'm going to try and show you a couple of different ways that you can do that starting in measure 31. So you've got 4 bars of 5/4 conducted in 4, 2 bars of 3, a bar of 2, 6 bars of 3, bar of 2, 2 bars of 3. So I actually do these 3/4 bars at measure 35 in 2 because of the grouping. So at 31 you get da 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 za 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 da da 1 and 2 and 1. And that is really how I think about it in my head. A lot of this stuff you can get bigger in your pattern to show the crescendo. You can get smaller in your pattern to show any type of decrescendo. And you've got kind of weird offbeat entrances that will throw you. And I'm talking about measure 37, 38, 39 coming out on beat 3. Ba, da, 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 dum, bum, B. And you can really bring a lot of depth into that by the space you give to beat 3. But you're not, I wouldn't recommend going anything overly flowery over the top in terms of overall shaping. This is where you want to bring clarity to what you're doing here. So in measure 31, you get 33 1 and 2 and one and two and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and ba ba. So a lot of that stuff I'm counting through, and that's what I'm going through in my head, is to try and bring as much clarity to this as possible. And again, going through measure 37, you're coming out of a zata do data do data do data do 1 and 2 n. So that becomes really clean and clear as to where those beats happen, and it goes into the 3/4 following. So that's 35, 36, 37, and 38. So if you're looking at 35, which is the 3/4, it would be like 1, 2, 35. Zata do data do data do data do 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and ba 2 3 1 2 ba 2 3 1 2 ba bing. And right there you have a triangle hit. So it's a matter of trying to give as much description as possible. Like I'm using this fist because the low brass is going to be coming in on this note that kind of sustains, and then again using this one. And so there's two different lines going on at 37, 38, and 39. One of which will be controlled in the right hand, which is the pop, 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 and the other part is the stuff that's controlled in the left hand, is the that kind of a gesture. So I'll do 37 so you can kind of see that again. So here's where 37 is getting all really clean, and bum bum dum be bum be ba dum be bum bum be dum bum be ting. So hopefully that gives you an idea about how you might adjust a couple of those different elements in order to bring clarity and time back into the picture. So again, we're talking about at the beginning of this movement, do you need to give every beat? No. But are there points where the ensemble members would feel more comfortable when you gave all of the beats? Absolutely. And so if your ensemble members immediately say, oh, no, I need every beat of every bar, do some experiments. See if you can do it without giving every beat. See how much you can leave out. It's amazing how smart the musicians are and how much they can fill in the gaps in order to count. If you transfer some of that responsibility to the player, it allows freedom for you to talk about other elements that you might otherwise be missing. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an opportunity to enjoy your own conducting, freeing yourself up, giving some of the responsibility to the players. Do you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4? Well, if they can do it on their own, then you can monitor that without overpowering their ability. And the players will thank you for it too, because if you say, oh yeah, well, I'm going to trust you on this, here you go, bum, 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 and off they go. They'll really appreciate that, really. And if they say, oh, well, we'd really feel a little bit more comfortable here, then you can bring that back in and give them those beats when they need it the most. Absolutely. So this particular piece has a lot of great opportunities for independence of part, independence of counting, and also shaping of the lines. It's a wonderful piece of music, and I'm so glad that this is one that was on the list of things to talk about. We've gotten an overwhelming number of messages asking about what we should do next, or mentioning what we should do next. So if you have a piece that you're thinking about that you'd really like to look at for in a couple weeks or next week, let me know. Shoot me a message, private message, or put it in the comments of the video and say, yeah, I'd really like to do this one. It's always been one of my favorites. It's something we do at festival, and I'm always concerned or questioning about this particular section. Let me know. Let me know what you'd like to talk about. We talked a little bit about these videos. In the links, you'll see the videos for the original folk songs, or original-ish recordings that are available on YouTube. The the French versions of the pieces, and they are fantastic to listen to. And you don't get the feeling that everybody's going dun 2 3 4 5. You get the feeling that everyone's saying zappa pa pa di da do zappa da di da bella zappa pa pa di da bella zappa do. But it's a story that's evolving rather than something that's strictly metered. Another video that's in there is the Bernstein conducting the Rite of Spring. I was fortunate enough to do the Rite of Spring with the University of Southern Mississippi Saxophone Ensemble last year, and I used that video as a huge resource to see what Bernstein did during these pieces. So you say, well, why would we do these? Why would you look at these other conductors? It's so you can try out new things, so you can have new elements in your vocabulary. And I really encourage you to check that out. Speaking of new music, we're going to be taking a look at Magnolia Star on Wednesday. So on Wednesday, we're going to be looking at that piece from a score study perspective. What are my steps that I would go through for it? We'll take the first few pages, go through the markings, go through my thoughts, what conducting ideas, different stages of what I'm doing, how that goes. And we're very fortunate that Steve Daniel, whose information is going to be in the description as well, has given us access to that piece for you to actually, you can print that out and go through and take a look at it yourself. Now, this is a very difficult piece of music. It's a collegiate level piece. I think it's listed as grade 5. And if you take a look at this music and you're like, wow, I'm an elementary band school band director, why am I even looking at this? This is impossible. We're also going to talk about that. And a little sneak peek on that is that it would be like if you're an elementary teacher and only ever read books that were intended for elementary kids. So why, you'd be like asking, why do you read Harry Potter if you only teach 3rd grade? We're going to talk about that as well. So important to take a look at these things, expand your vocabulary. Again, if you're enjoying this, go ahead and put a comment in the video. I tried to reply to all the comments last time. It was fantastic. And if you have watching this on replay, go ahead and write me a message, a personal message, indicating which pieces you'd like for us to cover and talk about here. And the interaction of this makes it just very special between my thoughts and the community that I'm talking to, because the wealth of knowledge in the community is spectacular. So go ahead and put those comments in, and look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Again, this is Lieutenant Michael Flynn with the United States Air Force Band of the West in San Antonio. We're going to be talking on Wednesday about Steve Daniel's Magnolia Star. It's 3 o'clock Central. Thanks a lot for checking out this stream, and hopefully we'll see you Wednesday.